Hi everyone, my name's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing the 20 questions book tag. I was tagged in this by RJ over at RJ Reads, whose channel I will link down below. This is just 20 questions about books and like your reading taste, what you like to read, things like that. So let's get into it. I'm excited. I love tag videos. I think they're a great way to kind of like get to see what kind of reader people are. So let's get into it. The first question is, how many books are too many books in a series? For this one, I think it depends on the series, because I've read some series where it needs a lot of books. Like the Throne of Glass series is really long, but like I think each book added something to the series. But then like Wheel of Time, I've heard that there's like 5 books that aren't good, so that's too long. That one has like 13 books, 14 books. So I think it really is dependent on the series itself. So ultimately, I think it's really series dependent. I love a good trilogy. It's definitely less daunting to know that there's not a whole lot of books in a series because like just knowing like I'm going into this series and there are 3 books, like that is always like a good feeling kind of. Or some series I think need more books. So it's really series dependent. If it's good writing, if it's a good story, if it's not dragging, I think it can go on for as long as it needs to. Quick little aside, I am reading these questions off my iPad, so if I have this glow about me, it's because, yeah, my iPad's in my lap. So anyway, next question is, how do you feel about cliffhangers? I love cliffhangers. Cliffhangers are what gets me excited to read the next book. It is what will get me to pick it up sooner. If a book doesn't end on a cliffhanger, I'm much more likely to kind of wait to read the next one longer. I think cliffhangers are always a great way for authors to just get people reading their books because they want to know what happened next. There's so many times where a book has not been my favorite, but the way it ends makes me certain I will pick up the next one. So I think that they're a really successful tool. It can be frustrating sometimes when the next book isn't out yet, but that's kind of like why authors do it, right? So I think they're very successful. Next up, hardback or paperback? Paperback. They're so much easier to hold, so much easier to read. I'm reading Howling Dark right now from the library, and it is a hardback, and I like physically can't hold it for that long, so I have to sit it on like a pillow on my lap or something to read it, or like on a table or something. And if it was a paperback, I'm much more likely to be able to hold it. I will say though, mass market paperbacks, not so much. They are, especially when they're big like this, they're harder to read, but I'm more inclined to break the spine, so that kind of helps. But mass market paperbacks, hard to hold. But like a great floppy paperback, so great, so easy to hold, easy to flip the page, feels good in your hand. Incredible. Hardbacks are just, they're harder to hold. You get like that, like it gets all rubbed raw right here when you're reading for a long time, and they're just harder to read. They do look really nice on shelves, but I also think that paperbacks look nice on shelves. Like everyone's always like, I can only get hardbacks for my shelves, but like this is one of my favorite shelves and it's almost all paperbacks. And like Throne of Glass, they look good as all paperbacks, so I think it depends. Next up is favorite book. Asking a reader what their favorite book is impossible. I have a lot of favorite books. Some books that are meaningful to me. Greenbone Saga, that's 3 books. But Jade Legacy specifically. Jade Legacy would be one of the best books I've ever read. The Fireborn trilogy, one of the best series I've read. It's not over yet, but so far. Gideon the Ninth and Harrow the Ninth. Harrow the Ninth being the best one so far. The Mad Ship, that whole series, but Mad Ship is the best one of the series. Let's go with that. Let's go with that for now. Those are some of my favorite books. I talk about books I love all the time, so there's a lot. I just love reading. I can't choose a favorite, but those are some of my favorites up at the top. Next up, least favorite book. This is hard because I don't like dunking on books a lot. Like, I read this book, so at the beginning of the pandemic, me, my sister, and 2 of my close friends did a book club, and we were reading a book a month or so, maybe 2 books a month, and we were taking turns. Each person got a turn to choose a book, and my sister chose this book that she didn't know a whole lot about, but she had got it at a used bookstore. It was called Jane 2. Yes, Jane 2. Don't remember who it's by. and it was awful. Pretty sure I gave it 1 star. I never give books 1 stars. This book was awful. It was like set in a small town. It was super racist, super, super bad. It was just such a bad book. So that's probably my least favorite book. None of us liked it. Even she didn't like it. She didn't know what it was about. She just was like, I got this at a used bookstore. Let's read this. And we were all like, yeah, let's do it. It was bad. It was a bad book. Next up, love triangles, yes or no? Mostly no. If a love triangle is not like the main focus of the book, then they don't really bother me. Like Fireborn has a love triangle that is not like super dramatic. It's not super, it's not the focus. It just happens to be there. So that one I don't mind. But when it's like who am I gonna choose? Like if it's like the main focus of the book, I don't really like it. But again, that also depends on the book because I think that sometimes they can help progress a story, so it really depends. For the most part, no, if it's the main focus, but if it is a side thing that is just kind of like mentioned, that's normally okay for me. I don't seek out love triangles, let's just say that. Next up, the most recent book you just couldn't finish. Let's see, what was my last DNF? Oh, it was When Women Were Dragons. I just tried to read this. I only got like 12% into the audiobook. It's a book set in like the 40s or 50s, I think. And it is a book about like all these women that are being mistreated by society who at their breaking point turn into dragons. And it's something that people just kind of sweep under the rug and don't talk about. I didn't get far into it because it was very, very focused on white feminism at a time when women of color were really, really going through it. I mean, they still are, but at this point in time, it was really bad, and it's not mentioned much, and I went to check reviews, and it says that it doesn't get much better. I just felt like so much of it was very, like, stereotypical feminism without any intersectionality, and I'm just not interested in reading something like that. Like, we all know the like stereotypical feminist story, and it's not a very successful thing for a reason. So this just didn't work for me. I have no interest in coming back to it. Next up, a book you're currently reading. I am currently reading Howling Dark and also Biased by Jennifer L. Eberhardt. Biased is a nonfiction book. It's the audiobook I'm listening to right now that just explores human biases, especially in America. And then Howling Dark is by Christopher Rocchio. It is the second book in the Sun Eater series, which I really enjoyed Empire of Silence last month. So excited to be reading this one. It is very good so far. I'm like 160 pages in. I've heard that this is the book where things like really pop off, so I'm super excited for that. Next up, next question. Last book you recommended to someone. Does my booktube count? Because I'm always recommending the same books. I recently recommended to one of my D&D groups that they all read Gideon the Ninth. I recently lent my friend Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I'm always telling everyone to read Fireborn. I bought my friend Jade City, so she would read that. Yeah. The books I'm always recommending people. I recommend people a lot of books. And I have some friends that like almost all they read is books I've recommended them, which I love. Because then we all can talk about the same books. The oldest book you've read? I mean, probably like the Odyssey, right? Isn't that like one of the oldest books ever? I read the Odyssey. I've read a lot of Shakespeare. I do theater for a living. That's probably the oldest stuff I've read. Yeah, we'll go with that. Next, newest book you've read. What's the last new release I read? I think The Final Strife by Sarah El Arifi. Yeah, I think that's the newest release I read. That just came out like last month or this month. I don't remember. It was really good. It's a fantasy book. It's really dark, deals with some interesting themes. Recommend it. But yeah, I think that's the newest book I've read, I think. Let's see. Next question. Favorite author? My favorite author changes all the time. Right now it's probably Robin Hobb, but some other honorable mentions: Tamsin Muir, Michael J. Sullivan, Brandon Sanderson, Emily Henry, Rebecca Rowanhorse, Rosaria Munda, Lee Bardugo. There's a lot. But I think right now it's probably Robin Hobb. Probably Robin Hobb. Next up, buying books or borrowing books. I borrow way more books than I buy. I'm a very, very frugal person. My husband is the one that's like the big spender of the family. I'm very frugal. I don't like to spend a lot of money, and sometimes like to my detriment, like I should treat myself more than I do. But yeah, I don't buy a lot of books. I pre-order a lot of books because then I feel less bad because the money comes out and I'm not expecting it. But like I don't really go to bookstores a lot and buy books. I almost exclusively borrow books. I also really like going on thriftbooks.com because I can get a lot of used books for cheap there, but their selection lately has been kind of rough because I'm reading a lot of books that a lot of people want, I guess. But yeah, I don't buy a whole lot of books. I know this looks like a lot, but honestly, the amount of books I've bought in the past year is not that much. Like, I'm gonna do an unhaul soon because so many of these books are just books I'm not as interested in anymore. It's like books I bought a long time ago that I just don't ever intend to reread and just are not really my reading taste anymore. So the amount of books on here that I bought recently is very low. It's almost all pre-orders. I don't like go to the bookstore and buy a lot of books. So yeah, almost exclusively a borrower. I borrow a lot of books. I think last month I borrowed almost every book I read. So, and that is audiobooks and physical books. I borrow both. I use the Libby app to borrow audiobooks, and then I go to my local library to borrow physical books as well. A book you dislike that everyone else seems to love. I mean, dislike is a strong word. Not too strong though. Name of the Wind. I cannot stand this book. When I finished it, I didn't like it, and the more I thought about it, the more I've disliked it, to the point where this is like one of my least favorite books of all time. And I think a big part of that is because so many people like it, and it frustrates me because I wish I liked it. And so it makes me even more angry, and then I'm like, God, I hated it even more. It's like this vicious cycle of me just hating this book. I don't think it's as bad as my hate for it is, but I didn't like it. I really found this book to just be boring. The writing is beautiful. Like, Patrick Rothfuss knows how to string together a sentence, but the story itself was so boring and the main character is unlikable. So, this book. Everyone loves this book. It's like I did a video of the best books I've ever read according to Goodreads, and this was on that list. So, everyone loves this book, and I really did not like it. Next up, bookmarks are dog ears. Bookmarks. I hate dog-earing books. Always bookmarks. I'm currently using a ripped off piece of a Pepto-Bismol box to bookmark my spot in Howling Dark, which is like the most on-brand thing for me. As someone with a lot of stomach issues, that felt very on-brand for me, but I will use anything before I will dog-ear a book. So, a book you can always reread. There's a few books. I could always reread Good Omens. A lot of books that are like really like low stakes, fun, relaxing. Travis Baldry's Legends and Lattes. Mostly standalones. Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is a romance novel by Casey McQuiston. Yeah, we'll go with those for now, but those are some that I really... Oh, a lot of Christina Lauren's earlier books. They're like big series. Those I'll reread those all the time on my phone when I'm bored. So, can you read while listening to music? Yes, I normally always have music playing to keep out the inner thoughts. That sounded really dark, but yeah, I have really high anxiety, so to distract me while I'm like, to make sure I don't lose focus while I'm reading, I play music. But it's always, I can't have any words. It's always instrumental. It's normally like lo-fi or jazz. Or sometimes I will try to find like something atmospheric depending on what I'm reading. So like if I'm reading like a really high fantasy, I like to turn on like Skyrim playlists or Witcher playlists. Sci-fi, I'll try to find like kind of like techno slow music. So things like that. It just depends. But I normally always listen to music while I'm reading. Unless it's an audiobook, of course. One point of view or multiple point of views? I prefer multiple point of views. I like to know as much as I can about a world, and I feel like with multiple point of views, you really get like a full scope of what's going on. And it's also really fun to see into somebody else's, like to see the same events happening from different points of view. I always think that's really interesting, especially if it's done well. Obviously, there's some exceptions. There's a lot of books that are like first person or that are one point of view, and they're still really successful. but I prefer multiple point of views, especially in a fantasy story. Like, it's so great to like fully learn a world through multiple people's eyes. Do you read a book in one sitting or over multiple days? For the most part, over multiple days, just because I read so much big fantasy books. There are some books that I've read in one sitting, mostly like romance or small fantasy books. I read a lot, it's just I'm always reading huge books, so it's just not feasible for me to read them all in one sitting. Sometimes audiobooks I can read, like if I start it when I get to work, I can finish it by the end of the day if it's like a shorter audiobook, because I listen to it pretty fast. But yeah, for the most part, I'm a multiple sitting kind of person, just because I can't read a 700-page book in one sitting. Last question, who do you tag? I'm going to tag my friend Venus over on Venus Escapes to Read. I will link her channel down below. She's incredible. Go subscribe to her channel. She reads a lot of fantasy, but she also reads a lot of thrillers and a lot of romance. I'm not very big into thrillers, but I also love romance, so we connect on a lot of fantasy and romance books. So go give her a subscribe. She is great. That is the end of that video. Thank you guys for watching. That was super fun. I love these videos. I love getting to know readers. I will also tag anyone that wants to do it. You're all welcome to do it. You don't have to wait. You can say I tagged you. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Comment down below a question to any of these. Like, what is your favorite book? Well, who's your favorite author? What's your least favorite? I love hearing people's least favorite books. So comment down below anything, any of these questions. Give me a quick answer for them. I love hearing it. If you really like my content, please hit the notification bell to be notified every time I post new videos. As always, your support means the world to me. And until next time, thanks guys.